Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome in, welcome in. We'll give everybody a few minutes to settle. Still got some people joining. Hello, hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
All right.
And how is your weather there? I'm all bundled up because the South is cold right now.
Oh, see, I'm in South Louisiana and it's not terrible today, but it was 26 degrees yesterday.
Exactly. What is going
I
on?
have strong feelings about this because like we didn't even get snow. We didn't even get snow. We got for and I've lived everywhere, but
Yeah,
like down here everything shuts down. Shuts
yeah,
down when it gets cold. People are freaking out.
it's
But
true.
but it did snow last year. Last year we got like feet and feet of snow. So I don't know
Oh,
what's happening. It's
it
crazy
feels,
town. But today is somewhat normal. I'm gonna take it.
yeah.
It's outside doing farm chores.
I decided not to complain because I speak with people all over the country and they were like, well, it's -4 here. And I was like, yeah,
Well, I was talking to one of my coworkers, and she lives in the Midwest, and she's like, "Oh yeah, it's da 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 here," and I'm like, "You live there, you on purpose, like you know
this is a choice.
that's normal." Southern Louisiana, I can spit into the Gulf is
Yeah,
not normal
not
to
supposed to
be
happen.
26 degrees in the middle
I
of the
did
day.
not sign up for this. Yeah.
No. All right, everybody, we'll give it one more minute before we get started. Let's see what's we got going on here. Oh,
Yeah,
for
say
Winnipeg,
hi.
Canada, -35 on the week. Well, get Canada. You signed up for that. But no, I used to live up in northern Minnesota, and it's like breathing through your nose, like the air hurts.
Yeah. Like your lungs are like,
Like
where's
it
the air?
hurts to
This is
breathe.
ice. I'm supposed to breathe air. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Oh no. Oh, the Czech Republic. I went to
Oh.
Prague not that long ago. It was lovely.
Oh, my daughters have gone. I've always wanted to go. I've made it to Poland, but I did not make
Okay.
it to the Czech Republic.
So we went to Prague and then I did Germany last year. And I live in outside New Orleans, and I had a psychic in downtown New Orleans tell me that I'm going to Italy.
Oh, I need to speak with this psychic
I
immediately.
know. I was like, are you gonna pay for that trip? Because
Yeah, exactly. I also feel that it's important for me to go and that it's part of my
I agree with, yes,
yeah.
yes. I think we're having the same vision of me going to Italy.
Ah,
All
that's
right, everybody. It is well 1:30 my time, 2:30 Eastern. Hello, hello, hello from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Another lovely, lovely place where it's warm and sunny. Rub it
yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to our sponsor webinar. We are here with Kathy Meis from Bublish. We are going to be talking editing, deep dive
Oh,
into
great.
editing, and
Yeah.
to get into the 4 levels of editing, how to figure out what your work needs. Kathy is the founder and CEO of Bublish, a complete guided self-publishing platform that empowers indie authors with the services, resources, and technology they need to be successful in today's crowded book marketplace. Yes, crowded is the
Yeah.
word.
Why editing's so important.
That's
Yeah.
why, and it really does help a book stand out. And I can say the editors I've worked with, I remember working with my first editor, and afterwards I was just like, she made it so much better. And she told me what to do, and then I did the thing, so I made it better. But it was hard.
Yeah. It is a collaborative experience. Takes
It is. It is. All right. Well, everybody, we are going to have plenty of time for questions. If you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, sometimes you have to click on the More button with the 3 dots. You'll see Q&A box. I would love it if you would put all your questions in there, because as we go about with the chat tends to just kind of scroll up and eat all the questions if I don't grab them fast enough. So we do love that Q&A box for at the end, and we'll try and get to all of your questions. So for now, I'm going to let Kathy get started. I'm going to be quiet,
yeah.
and let's get going.
Thanks for having me. I always love being part of this community, Women in Publishing. It's a great conference and it's a great community. So thanks for having me. So we're going to be talking about all things editing. really quickly, you heard a little bit about my company. I am the founder of Bublish, but I'm also a 30 plus, oh my gosh, I think it's close to 40-year veteran um, with many, many years of developmental editing and also being a ghostwriter. So I run a self-publishing company, but I'm also one of the few founders who also is actively still writing and editing. Not as much as I used to, and not as much as I want to, but I love the craft of writing and editing. So I've worked on many bestsellers and award-winning books. It's one of our really sweet spots, positioning and editing at Bublish, and we love working with authors. So I hope you'll check us out. And we are based in Charleston, South Carolina, where it's supposed to be warm, but it isn't. All right, and I am going to cover a lot today, a lot of ground. So there are a couple of more in-depth slides where I'll probably stop and take some questions, but I'm going to probably leave them towards the end so that I can make it through all of this content because it is a big topic. So we're going to talk about the 4 levels of editing and how to decide which level of editing is best for your book, what it needs in order for your manuscript to be enriched and really be competitive in today's crowded book marketplace. And then how to prepare your manuscript. And that is a bigger thing than you realize, and we're going to get into detail. And that's how you optimize your edits, is by really being prepared for each level of editing. We're going to cover some of the common missteps and mistakes that happen in the editing process and how you can avoid them, how to work through disagreements or questions with your editors at different levels, and how to budget the right amount of time and money in order to, get a professional, to go through a professional editing process. And ROI, which is a term I use more as a founder than as an editor or writer. But ROI means return on investment, right? So editing is probably one of the bigger pieces of your budget if you invest, especially in multi-level editing. So what does it look like to have a multi-level editing, professional editing, and what should you expect as a return on that investment, ROI, and then Q&A, of course. So a couple of facts that I found just to kind of get a sense of really, we see it a lot. People don't hire professional editors. They don't really kind of understand the value of editing. So only about 50% of self-publishers hire a professional editor. And more than 65% of self-publishers spend less than $1,000 on professional editing, which in my budgetary knowledge means they're probably getting lower level edits like copy editing and proofreading, which is great. But there's incredible value in higher level edits as well. And I'm going to show you ways to save money on those things too. But those are kind of state of affairs. So why does editing matter? So I love this quote from Stephen King: "To write is human, to edit is divine." And in my years running Bublish, I'll tell you a story from the early days that will make you laugh and make you realize the power of editing. So I was at NINC down in Florida, which is Novelists Inc. It's a kind of invite-only powerhouse authors that are very, very successful. Many of them were romance writers who had bought their rights back from the big houses in the early days. And it was about 10 years ago. And I was sitting next to this older man. I didn't know very many people, and he was quietly sitting by himself. So we struck up a conversation. Well, it happened to be that he was the first editor of someone, I'm not going to give his name or the name of the author, but as big as, if not bigger than Stephen King, just in a different genre. And the conversation went on. We had dinner together, and he told me the story of how they had paid him all this money to take this now very famous, extremely successful author's work and cut it down by like 50%. They could see the promise of the storytelling. The storytelling was great, the plot was great, but it was completely overwritten. It needed tons of work. And so this editor, who really nobody recognized except for the people who planned the conference because he was going to speak, really was behind one of the biggest brands in publishing. And that's the thing about editors. They really are, behind the scenes. But I tell you that because it's kind of unbelievable that nobody knew who this man was. And if he had not done what he did to assist this author, you just wonder where that career might have gone. So let's dive into probably the most, the nuts and bolts of all of this. And um, nobody learns this in school. You learn about grammar, you learn about the English language, you learn how to write. But in all my years in elementary school, grammar, and college, nobody talked about the types of editing that one would go through in a professional multi-level edit in order to bring a manuscript to market. You learn these things really by taking courses that are outside normal education, specializing in writing and creative writing. But there are 4 different levels, and 2 are higher level edits. They're in orange, developmental and line editing, and 2 are lower level edits, copy editing and proofreading. And I encourage you, just take a screenshot of this if you'd like, because it's a great little handy tool to kind of understand at a high level which are the main types of editing. So some people call developmental editing structural editing. So it does work at the main elements that need to go into shaping the plot, the storyline, the character arcs, the character development, the overall structure of the storytelling, right? So it's very high level. Think of it, say, in architecture, where it's about, framing the building. It's everything to frame the building, make sure it's sturdy, it doesn't have any big holes, it doesn't have any foundational flaws where it's going to collapse. It involves, as a deliverable, if you hire a developmental or structural editor, extensive inline editing. So at Bublish and most places, this inline editing is done with Microsoft Word track changes. And so the editor is going to go in there and actually show you, consider like moving this paragraph here or there. And then it's going to have tons of comments on the side that are going to guide you as to, what suggestions they have around maybe going deeper on setting the scene for something, or deeper on setting up a plot twist, or deeper on giving us the backstory on a character, right? The big pieces moving together. And you're also going to get, and this is very important, an in-depth letter from the editor that's going to give you, and we're talking, 10 to 15 pages of insights where the strengths and the weaknesses. Because the other thing the developmental editor is going to see is patterns in the structure, the structural strengths and the structural weaknesses of the story. And so the letters, like, read the letter first. Don't be intimidated. A good edit is going to have a lot of red. And if you're working in Microsoft Word, you change a period and it's red. So don't be intimidated by that, but just sit down with an open mind and, read the letter first. And it should kind of prepare you for what you're going to see. The timeline for the editor's work at the developmental level is typically 4 to 6 weeks. Some of that depends on the length or the complexity of the story. If you are working, say, on a nonfiction book that requires like scientific or financial expertise, with a developmental edit on, say, sci-fi, where there's a lot of world building, that type of edit might take a little bit longer. So basically, that's your highest level of editing. I'm going to go back to the manuscript assessment in a second after I get through the 4 levels and tell you what that's about. The next is called line editing. So line editing is just below developmental editing. And you do have to, I think, whenever you work with a company like Bublish or an individual editor, have them define the way they define it, right? So the terminology is pretty clear here, but some authors just call them, some editors kind of mix developmental and line. We see them as extremely distinct. So when you go through a developmental edit and you're doing the work yourself, to fix things, the line editor is a great person to kind of make sure things were fixed. You can go through a second developmental edit at Bublish. That's done by the same developmental editor, a second pass through. They know the content. They charge a lot less to do it the second time through. Or you can go to line edit and do that, potentially with a different person if you're looking for a different input. We recommend every level of editing is done by a different person. Sometimes because the skill set of a developmental versus a proofreader is so different. But say from developmental to line editing, you might want a male perspective and then a female perspective, or you might want especially like if you're cross genre, like the developmental editor might be really deep in one genre, the line editor might be really deep in the other genre. And you do want to make sure that your editor, especially at the higher level edits, really does know your genre and has worked in your genre before. Really great editors can handle quite a few different genres, but they should have at least worked in it. And the more let's see, like, I'm thinking like romance tropes, and the more subgenre specific the reading experience needs to be for the reader, the more important it is for your higher level editors, especially, to really know the tropes, as it were. So line editing then is on language and flow. So instead of now working at the outside walls of this manuscript, you're going in and putting up the drywall and you're starting to fill in, and they're working really at the paragraph and sentence structure. So an example of how that might have to do with also plot is that, like, think of a thriller. Everybody thinks, okay, that's driven by plot. And that author that I told you where I met his first editor, this was his problem. He was great at the storytelling, great at the plot, but he was not great at the tension that one builds in a sentence. The pace of a thriller is, yeah, great plot lines, but if the twist takes 30 minutes to unfold with long flowing sentences, you're not building that emotional edginess in the reading experience. So the line editor works at that level. So an example, I don't know if any of you read Flesh, which won the Booker Prize this year. So Flesh is a really hard book. I read it in a single night because David Suzaile was coming to the Charleston Literary Festival. And I was like, if you read this book, you can go to that, because I had a really busy editing weekend myself. So I read the book in one night. Not a book I would ever read, but at the line level and at the descriptive level, he left so much unsaid. And the reason was that it was so hard to digest the world he was creating, which was exactly what he wanted to do, that he was giving you, space to take in was happening. And like, he never described his main character that much. He described what happened to his main character. And that was like not only very interesting choices around character development and plot, but at the line level, it was masterful, like a Joan Didion kind of masterful. So line editing is one that a lot of people skip, but it is really where you build emotion, is at the line and paragraph. That's where you're executing on like the emotional world you're creating for the reader, is at the sentence and paragraph level. And please excuse me if I'm getting a little too passionate, but I'm very passionate about sentences. Okay, so now you have your two higher level. Copy editing is grammar, syntax. Oh, on the deliverables, sorry, with line editing, you should be getting very extensive inline editing with track changes. Comments, not as heavy, but like after a developmental edit, if there's plot holes that are still there, they're going to say, hey, you've already said this, in chapter da, or what happened to that storyline, it disappeared. But it's not as much of a structural focus, but there are structural comments in there if there's a major one. And you should also expect a letter from the editor. That takes about 4 weeks. And then copy editing, you're now moving into the lower level edits with grammar, syntax. We use Chicago Manual of Style, the 18th edition, Merriam-Webster for our dictionary, and they are applying the rules. Now, I, for example, can do strong line editing. I'm a developmental editor. I'm not a copy editor. I don't know all the rules, and sometimes I'm still surprised. So can I copy edit? Yes. Should you ever hire me for your copy editor? No. Very different skill sets. So if you hire a freelancer and they're like, yeah, we'll start here, I can do it all, big red flag, because they can't. There's totally different types of brains. People who are copy editors, they know every single rule. They're going to be citing it. Oftentimes, so they're going to catch a lot of things that developmental and line just weren't as concerned with. They're going to clean up. It might be around verb tense where you have a complex, maybe you're looking back in time, or memories, things that have complex application of verb tenses that are necessary, and the line editor got 95% of them, but the copy editor is going to clean that up and make sure it's accurate. If there's anything that's questionable, they're going to tell you the rule and you can make up your mind. They often won't correct grammar that's in quotes, that's in conversation, but they should be correcting grammar when it comes to your narrator. And they may say, even in the conversation, when it's actually being said by a character in the book, this, you might want to do this. So their focus is grammar and syntax. You should get a letter from them. It's heavy inline editing for grammar. So you won't see as many edits probably as you would in your upper level, but you should see plenty because it's a very different type of edit. Lighter use of comments, mostly to tell you the weird rule that you never learned. I'll tell you one last week. So someone who had gone through multi-level editing with us said, which is it, blonde or blonde? They're both in here, B-L-O-N-D-E, B-L-O-N-D, which is it? And so the project manager came to me and I was like, I think it's with an E, but let's go look it up. And in fact, it's an E for woman and no E for man. But the trend, because language is extremely dynamic, is toward without the E in the US. I think the UK was with the E. So in fact, then the project manager who was reviewing the quality of the copy edit went through and the rule had been applied perfectly. So our advice to the author was, here it is, it's applied, but if you're uncomfortable with that shift, the trend is toward blonde without an E. So about 2 to 3 weeks, and the letter will focus on more on grammar, tense, and things like that. And the final is proofreading. Now, even when you're applying copy edits, accepting, rejecting, making those final tweaks, proofreading is your final cleanup, catching those typos, need another set of eyes on it. And they focus on literally just capturing in line. And if there should be kind of very light use of comments, and you should also expect a letter from them. The letters get shorter as you go, down to the lower edits. And that typically takes about 2 weeks unless it's a really complex or long book. And I think for this one, it's worth stopping for some questions. Do you agree, Casey? Oh, let me go back.
Sure.
Yeah, do
Sure.
you have any questions? Let's see.
Well, I did see the first question, not related to this, but are the slides going to be available? I know we're going to have a replay for everybody, but
I could do that. I can do that. Would you
if
like
you'd
the
like to
text?
give me the slides, I can add them with the replay, so that way people can kind of do it at their own
Sure, sure, sure,
pace.
sure, sure. Yeah.
All right, first question. I would like to be traditionally published, but the quotes I've gotten for developmental editing are around $3,000, and I'm not sure that the ROI is worth it. Would I benefit from an editorial review since the developmental edit is out of my price range?
Yeah. Oh, and thank goodness, because I don't want to script editorial review. We call it a manuscript assessment. A couple of things there. Yes. So when we do, and again, you have to get clear on how a company or editor or whomever is describing um, what they're going to provide you with and how skilled they are. But a manuscript assessment at Bublish is done by a developmental editor who understands your genre, and you basically get the letter. So, extremely in depth letter with examples from your manuscript telling you the strengths and areas of weakness. It is much less expensive. So, if you're unsure, where to start, or you have budget constraints, a manuscript assessment is a great way to get the eye of a developmental editor on your work, and they're going to tell you what you need to fix. And the question is, do you need additional assistance to do that? But the other thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit later is, critique partners, beta readers, and and even if you go through an edit, this is your biggest investment always. It's also your biggest time, consumer in the publishing process to go through multi-level editing. It's not like you have to do it in order.
Mhm.
And your book stays the same price, so it's expensive. So if you if you really optimize everything before, get as much feedback and make as many improvements to the manuscript as you can, then you're going to set yourself for optimizing the editing levels you get. Now, the other thing is, and I do talk about this at the end, we're actually building one too. I don't know if the others are built by editors. I have not tried them, but there are evolving AI manuscript assessment tools out there in the world. And, you know, I believe very strongly, especially from my experience, and we've built AI that analyzes manuscripts for other purposes at Bublish, but that a human editor is far superior. But from a price perspective, maybe, and then maybe you would get some guidance on what type of edit you need. Also, if you could afford a line edit, if you can do like something to get the structure fixed and then do the line editing, that's at least one high level of editing and it's less expensive. So there are ways around it. But the other thing to think about There are also, buy now, pay later to try to do the payments over time. If it's your first book, the amount you will learn by going through multi-level editing it's an educational investment, and that is part of the ROI. So if you're like writing in a series, especially, or planning to write multiple books or make writing, part of your career, this is a course in what it looks like to take something good and make it great. So that's part of the ROI, is that you're just a more intelligent writer the second time around, and you probably need everybody needs an editor all the time. I just have to say that. Like if you can afford it, it's a great thing, because you will never see it. It's your baby, the way a professional who knows the market and what's out there, and you just won't see it the way that they do. That's their job, is to see it and to enrich your manuscript. But you will learn a lot, and you'll need less editing, and you'll write better. So it is an investment in your career and your future as well. And that's part of the ROI.
All right, excellent. Well, and I will say too, as a project manager for publishers, I've worked with a few traditional publishers, and I've seen authors get considerably become better writers after working with the same editor throughout the series, and then joking around with the editor about, they're like, oh my God, they're making my job so much easier because they've worked together and they've
Yeah.
learned how to improve those things. All right,
Yeah.
another question. Is there a way to take a developmental editor for a test drive?
Some places will do samples for you. Other places, we do not do sample edits. We just let our books speak for themselves. But that's, it's certainly something that, you can ask for. And I would always do that with a freelancer.
That's what I was just gonna say. I was gonna say, if
Yeah,
it's a
right.
freelancer,
I've
they better.
always, yeah, because there are a lot of people hanging their hats as editors. And I will tell you, and we hear that story. I already paid for editing, and now I'm getting terrible reviews. My book was published, and it is heartbreaking. I could do a whole thing on how to, kind of vet editors, but it's not as big a focus for this presentation. Um, but just make sure you get a list of the books that they've done. Email those authors, unless they're, super, super famous. They probably would answer. I remember one that I ghost wrote. Now this was a very well-to-do person who had a big reason for writing a book, but I was her fourth ghostwriter before she published. Fourth ghostwriter before she published. And the first story was the first one, and you were like, wow. I mean, just the time and the money. So, and and I think too, like, it's not always just about like working. This is a little bit of a shameless plug, but like, if there's a problem with an edit, or someone, like, there's a project manager here who, like, we train our editors. We work with people who have worked with us for a long time, and they know what we do is called a generous edit. Like, even at the copy editing and proofreading level, there's, a generous editing going on. And so to have a freelancer, like, who's the quality checker on that? Like, you are. And if you don't know the quality checking, so it's not a bad thing to work with companies that have systems for quality checking. Okay,
You get a little bit
shameless
more.
plug.
But no, but in general,
Yeah,
working with a company, there's a hierarchy, there's people they answer to, there's, rather than a freelancer is just their own person, which if you want to use them, fine, but that's really your only recourse is them.
right.
Um,
And it's not to say there are some fantastic
oh,
freelancers
yeah,
out there.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
So, yeah, and our editors are not our employees. So, but they are a pool of people that we work through. We nurture them. We show them what we want. We check our edits. So, um, we are working with freelancers, but they're never like someone we just go find on Fiverr and say, "Hey, you want to edit this book?" Because it's
Some rando.
yeah. Well, and the other thing I would say, a lot of times people are like, can I talk to my developmental editor? And I will say with a freelancer, often you can if that's something you want. But our editors are so busy because they are professional editors. This is all they do for their livelihoods is edit. They don't have second jobs. This is what they do. So your project manager becomes the person who handles that so they can keep focused and make a living doing what they're really great at. So anyway,
Cool. Well,
there's a
we
lot
have
of
a
different.
slew of questions. Do you want to
Okay,
continue or do we want to keep going and then get back to these at the end? You let me know.
what are you doing on time? Um, Maybe we better keep going a little bit and then we'll.
All right, we'll come back to the question, guys. Don't worry.
Okay,
Keep
I'll try
plugging
to
them
go
in there.
fast. All right.
Yeah, we'll keep plugging them in
Preparation.
there.
Okay, getting yourself and your manuscript ready. Okay, mindset, really important. Someone is going to tell you that your baby needs a haircut, and you're like, but I love my baby's hair that is down to their belly. It's all, so you have to be really open your mindset, just say, we're on the same side, and I'm here to accept, at least with an open heart and an open mind, what you're going to say to me. Do that thorough self edit, and incorporate early beta reader input. There are beta readers, there are critique partners, and there are beta readers and critique partners. Some of them, if they're just your friends, I don't really highly recommend that because they don't want to say that your baby needs a haircut because they love you. But if you can get into some groups where people are somewhat professional, and you can also say to them, I know, you want to be kind, and I'm sure you'll be constructive in your feedback, but I'm really looking for concrete feedback to make this better. Give them permission to critique and do their job. And then find the right editor or editorial team so that, you do get a really high quality edit. If you're going through multi-level editing, again, like having the line editor have access to the developmental edit, and having a team that can bring you through and quality check and make sure everything happens in the same way is of value. This is really important, and it's especially important if certain things are, you just like things just so, and you don't want an editor to change it. Style sheet. So what is a style sheet? So world building, your style sheet is extremely in depth. Like, tell them what all the weird words and places mean and where they're located, as much information to orient them as possible. If it's nonfiction, for example. And, I remember one time the author was a very famous realtor, and she wanted the word realtor uppercase. And so the word realtor was uppercased every time in the book. That was part of the style sheet. And also a one-page overview. So don't make the editor like read it in order to understand it, because if they're disoriented, they can't do as strong a job on the edit. So, what's the genre? What's the major plot twist, like a book description, and maybe high level character sketches, things like that. Those are really important to optimize the edit. When we have a form that when you start the editing process, we ask you for those things as a reminder in the form, and along with your manuscript. Review your formatting in Microsoft Word. So if you have different fonts, or your justification is one way and then the other way, the editor has to fix all these things. If you have block quotes, or if you have sidebars, or you have pull quotes, all of those things, you can Google, like, how would you format them, or put a comment in, or glyphs are another thing, something where a scene break happens. kind of do a little homework and prepare your Microsoft Word document so it's as clean as possible, so you don't get 100 glyphs, added as part of it. You're just wasting the editor's time, and that's slowing things down. And you want them to be totally focused on their edit and the value they can provide at a higher level. Create, very important, have seen lots of problems with this, a file naming convention to ensure version control. If you're going, especially through multi-level editing, label it dev edit, line edit, copy edit, and then you want it dated, put the date on it, put the initials of either your initials or the last initials of, the editor can be added at the end. Ours is title, the initials of the author, the type of edit, the draft, if it goes through, sometimes books do go through line editing or something more than once, and date, and then dash initials. Understand, because version control, which is meaning you're working on the right version of the manuscript and not an older version, which can cost you time, money, and a lot of heartache. File naming convention and an organized system for storing those and maybe folders on your laptop is really important. And then understand the editing timelines for your own publishing timeline. If you're doing multi-level editing, you are devoting time not only for the editor to do their job, and I showed you those, timelines, but how long is it going to take you to address it? A developmental edit certainly is going to take you more time than a proofread, but if it's really complex, you probably want to leave a good amount of time for the proofreading. So you never want to rush these things because they come back to haunt you. And block out that time, not just what the editor's doing, but how much time do you need given your schedule to do it. And one other tip is, if you are going to write in a series, the editor should know that as part of your overview. This is book one in a series. And, back to that one point, if you're going to write a series, book one will always be your anchor. So that needs to be, a really wow them book. And that's where I would invest the editing, and it will make the entire series better. But secure the same editor for future books. That doesn't matter as much at the copy editor and proofreader level, but it certainly matters a lot at the developmental and line editor. And so you need to say, can I come back to you? And if you're happy with them, of course, but try to secure the same editor. And common mistakes. So especially when you're going through this the first time, again, this is a collaborative, and sometimes when people get it back, it's very emotional because they've been working on their book for a long time. So have some deep breathing practice so that you don't go in where the editor is your enemy. Be open. Don't start with the wrong level of editing. This is something we do see a lot in self-publishing because people have their friends read it and their friends say, oh, it's great, I loved it. You might want to think about adding more color to that scene, and that's it. So they believe that their book is ready to go. And then if they go through a manuscript assessment, they're going to know where to start. But if they just go to copy edit and there are huge structural issues, like you can't do the copy edit before the developmental or line edit unless you're willing to do the copy edit again. So that's time and money and heartache. Don't skip that preparation phase, because the more informed your editor is, the more you orient your editor at any level. And you can have through the process of the one book, multi-level, but also it'll be documentation that you can provide if you're writing a series to for the next book. But don't skip preparation. It really will uh, optimize your edits and ensure that the editor doesn't have to waste time on things that they have to learn inside the manuscript. Don't expect a copy editor to fix your plot issues. So, we often ask our copy editors to come back to us and tell us, if something needs a higher level of editing, and they do, and it is always the author's prerogative to say no. They'll tell us why. But a copy editor is not that's not their job. It's not their training, and it's not their job to give you a developmental edit. So you really do have to have clear understanding of the level of editing and fair expectations. Don't do that problem with the version control. Don't rush your editors or yourself. There's, sometimes, you set deadlines and they're just not realistic. This is not the phase of editing that you want, the phase of publishing you want to rush. And don't underestimate the value of multi-level editing and high-level editing especially. So how to handle disagreements. And this, it's not just disagreements, but it's also like questions and like, is this right? Or, did I get a good edit? All of that. First of all, be very informed, choose your editors carefully, make sure you align your expectations with the level of editing, understand the terms of your agreement with the company or the editor and your rights as a client. Be open. An editor's job is to enrich your manuscript. This is not criticism, it's constructive feedback. Be respectful. If you are like, I don't get this, what's going on here? And it's your prerogative to question, like, I don't understand this, or, could you clarify? But always start from a place of respect, not anger or judgment. You're more inclined to, really get an in-depth if you look at yourselves on the same side, and you are. It is absolutely your right to ask your editors for questions when you don't understand an edit. Sometimes that means you can have face-to-face time. At Bublish, it does not, but your project manager is going to get involved in order, to clarify things. Example was the blonde. I learned something new, and there's especially some of these crazy grammar, rules. But you should expect your questions answered, not always person to person, but by someone. So either who is going to answer your questions or the liaison. And when you're hiring someone, those are fair questions to ask before you sign a contract. All right, love this one. Joan Didion, one of the great masters of the English sentence and everything else. Substitute damn every time you're inclined to write very. Your editor will delete it and the writing will be just as it should be. So even the great ones, there may be tension, but they are with their editors for years in the traditional houses. So can technology help? And I think this is a great question for, and I think we're going to have like 10 minutes for questions. So, but I think this is a great question for people who do have, limited budgets. So I think AI tools can help with ideation and feedback. That can save you time, money, improve efficiency. It's happening more and more that people are interacting with AI while they're writing. AI cannot make you a more creative human. It can dull that. If you go outside and you practice, describing the wind and what you smell after rainfall and listening to people and their cadence when they speak, that can make you a stronger writer. That can make you a more creative human. So there's a, there's a trade-off here, but they are not perfect. AI is definitely great as a tool, but you should use it with great care, not only in the moment, but for what it does to your brain. And we build AI. So I'm a techno-optimist. So I'm not saying no, but I do not believe at this point that it is capable of human editing. Even at the grammar level, I have been appalled. Like it does it like it comes into my documents sometime because everything's getting AI input, and I get furious. I'm like, how do I turn this off? And my team, of course, has to tell me because I'm just in a all I'm all frazzled. It's not sophisticated enough. It is also a layer beyond humanity. It's reading the things we say about humanity, so you have to be very careful. And it's also not fully accepted at major self-publishing platforms. You have to identify it at KDP. If you used AI, there's a very blurry line there now, but I do believe more and more readers also value human creativity and human work. And to me, it is a call for becoming more unique in your perspective and your voice. Q&A is right after this. Budgeting, a couple of high level. I am going to show you on Bublish, on our editing page, you can put in a word count and get a quote. But we are not by far the least expensive, and we're not the most expensive. So we're kind of in the middle, but it's a good way to kind of, get quick amounts, quick numbers around editing. And we do have, the women in publishing is 20% off. So definitely I'll take you there for a second too. Okay, how to save money, pay per word or per hour. I'm a big fan of per word because per hour is kind of open-ended. Per word is, you get it as tight as you can and you pay per word and you know how to budget for that. But some editors do work per hour, but that's something to be aware of. And maybe you even say to them, I got to have a cap on that. Work with qualified beta readers and critique partners, the key there being qualified. Read your book out loud. That's another way to save money and catch things. If it doesn't flow when you're saying it, a lot of people, when they get to their audiobooks, the narrators, be it them or someone else, catch like, oh, that does not flow. Don't overwrite because you're going to pay to have that edited. Self-edit and prepare the manuscript for optimal outcomes like we talked about. And don't hire the wrong editor or start with the wrong level of editing. So don't rush into it. Do your research, really know what you're doing. Attend webinars like these that can help you. And optimize your role in the process. In the end, if you're self-publishing, and really, even if you're going after an agent, you get you get the feedback, you get the edits back, and what you do with them either takes it to the next level or not. But if you reject them all, or you rush it, or you don't go deep and really think about what the editor is saying, you aren't a full partner. And so you're not going to get the ROI that you want. And this is the biggie, return on investment. So it is an entrepreneurial journey, and we have published many traditionally published authors now, and we've edited their book. So we've had some of our authors get traditional deals through right sales or purchase of audiobooks. So whatever route you're taking in the publishing spectrum of offerings now, it's still an entrepreneurial journey, and you still are the person running that company. And it is more and more competitive, and quality really is a key differentiator. So define your brand, that experience you want to bring to readers. And if it involves high quality, then invest in multi-level editing. Measuring success, to me, and this is a big one, depends on your goals. So just be very honest and clear about what your goals are. I've had authors who really needed to make money fast. And the genre you choose might be impacted then. I've had authors who make more money around the book. They practically give the book away, but they wanted to bring in clients or speaking gigs. I've had authors whose goals are to, drive a political discussion or a cultural discussion. So be clear about what you want to achieve and then align what you do with those goals, because that's how you measure success, is if you achieve your goals. A professional, well-written, and well-positioned book is necessary for success, but it doesn't guarantee it. So it's again like if you build the building on shaky ground, it could collapse. This is foundational, but it doesn't guarantee success. And it's also a lot of different moving parts. So some wonderful stories never, I mean, read about some of the greats, like even in the past, the rejections or not. Jane Austen, I just posted about her. She never saw financial success really in her own lifetime. It happened afterward. I don't want that to happen to you. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, you know, you got to decide I'm going to build the foundation or not, and then I'm going to try my hardest. But if you don't build the foundation, very, very hard to achieve it. And what's your timeline to get a return on your investment? And is it realistic, right? So typically, if you don't have any brand recognition in the marketplace and you go out and you write a great book, your goal should really be to get a lot of people to read it. You're not going to make as much money because you're probably going to give the ebook away a lot, or you want to get reviews, you want to get momentum started. That's why series are so wonderful, because then you can go back and build off of that and get more with the read through. But is it realistic? We literally just got a call, and this author did well. It's like a romantic time travel series. And the agents just called. Now, the first book was published 3 years ago, and an agent called us and said, they want to buy the translation rights in another country. That's going to be a nice little advance, and then ongoing royalties to capitalize on the books that he's already written. But it didn't happen 2 weeks after he published. So that's my shtick on that. So how much time do we have? Did I lie? Oh, we have 5 minutes. I can stay on a little bit extra if we want to.
Okay.
And I just was going to also just show, let me escape. You can start with the questions if you want.
Okay. I did drop the link that they can use
Yeah.
for you guys
So
in the
here's the,
chat.
yeah. And then it looks like this. If you come through here, we know you came from Women in Publishing. So do use the sponsor link or this one. And then, and here's the editing page. So on Bublish, just go to editing.
Oh, it's not showing. It's still showing the
Oh,
slides.
okay, wait a
I think
minute.
you have to stop sharing and then share it again. Yeah.
Sorry again.
Nope.
Let me just desktop it share. Okay, now you can see the slides, and then
Yes.
can you see this?
It's still just the slides.
Oh, what is going on? I just want the whole desktop. That's what I'm sharing.
There we go.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Blame it on AI. That's what we all do, right? So this is just our editing page, and you can put in your word count. You can also put in, the discount if you want, and see what 20% off looks like. But it will calculate, and it's all the different levels. And you can also see the difference between a manuscript assessment and a developmental edit. So I'm a big fan of those, and those really do exist for lowering the cost of getting a developmental editor's eyes on the book.
All
So,
right. Oh, well, somebody was asking, what about nonfiction? Because I noticed we talked a lot about fiction primarily when we were discussing the editing, but I think everything else holds true for nonfiction as well for the levels of
oh
editing.
yeah, I'm a nonfiction memoir business. That's my background. I edit some literary fiction, but not edit like feedback more for some people, but it's not where I play. I ghostwrite nonfiction. I developmental edit nonfiction. So to me, everything applies. The bigger thing around nonfiction is that you can make a lot of book money around your book, and you should always connect your book to a constellation of content. So, but because you want to know who bought your book. You always want to know who bought your book, but you really need to know who bought your book if you're doing a business book or something where, you want a speaking gig or you want a client. We work with a lot of speakers and consultants as well.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have to wait until your manuscript is complete, or can you work with them as you go? For example, finish a couple chapters and send it in.
We don't do that. I don't recommend that because it's not a complete entity yet. Like, how can you assess if you can't see it all? So no,
Yeah.
we
Also,
wouldn't do
also, I
that.
will say you want to save yourself money and time and a little heartache. You don't want to send your first draft.
Right.
You want to put a little bit of, effort into the editing on your own part before, because that would just makes a little less work for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. In your developmental edit process, does the editor read through the complete manuscript and then go back for comments?
Well, I think that depends on the editor. Well, they definitely, yeah. It kind of depends. Like, they may discover a problem later, and then I think in the moment, I typically would put them in the moment, but then I always go back and I would review my own comments, which is really pretty easy to do because you can list them, and so you just go through and you can then update them. But in the moment, but every editor is slightly different. And I think fiction is different than nonfiction in that regard. Like with nonfiction, you kind of know at the table of contents level what thematically is coming, whereas fiction, you wouldn't have that so much. So I would say in fiction, they probably would read through once and then go back and comment more frequently.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Oh, I missed a row. I scrolled too fast. For nonfiction faith-based writing, should I get an editor who is experienced in this genre?
Yeah, I mean, faith-based, so you know, we do a lot of Christian books as well. And you definitely, if you want someone with a really strong Christian perspective, you can ask for that, but not as long as they're open to it, it kind of depends on the book and kind of your inclination. There's, often when we talk with authors early on, there is a very fine line between Christian and spiritual. And so there has to be extreme clarity on that at the positioning level and the titling level and the language level. And so I would say get real clarity on your goals and the audience you want to speak to, and how broad or narrow is that audience. Even within a religion, that says large as Christianity, there are different sectors. Same with Islam and Judaism. So, that I think is important, is to really make sure is a Christian. And then I would ask very directly, have they worked on Christian manuscripts? And then if you really gel with someone who hasn't, are you open to it? Yeah.
Okay. All right, here's another one. I'm kind of going to scroll around a little bit more because there's a bunch. Does a hybrid publisher handle these edits, or should you complete them first?
Oh, hybrid. We are not hybrid. So we have hybrid elements like selling translation rights, and we have TV and movies optioned, and those are traditional. So that's hybrid. Hybrid publishers, I don't know how you feel,
I
but
think it really depends on the publisher. Like they're
exactly,
all
because
so
the word
different.
hybrid is is a hybrid word.
Yeah, it can
Can mean
mean many,
different
many
things.
levels.
So that is a question I would ask.
Yeah, but that's good to know before you go sign on with any hybrid publisher.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you know exactly what level of editing, how many revisions. Like, there's a lot of things. Really got to get down to the nitty-gritty of what's included.
And, what is, learn about their editors. And will I be working with an editor who knows my genre? Will I be able to talk to that editor, or will I have a project manager? What happens, do I have ultimate control? Because sits between self-publishing and traditional. In a traditional house, sometimes the house wins. So it depends on,
Yeah.
the rules of their hybrid model.
Yes, agreed. Also, if you're a very good writer who has worked with editors before, could that make you a good editor? Like if somebody wanted to become an editor.
Yes. So I'm a writer and an editor, but I was told that's kind of rare. I think, the thing is that it depends on what type of editor you want to be. I don't know if you want to put that in the comments, but like if you um I would take some courses on editing if you can, or get a certification from a reputable online um, institution. There are a growing number of them. But you probably have an edge in kind of knowing about the market, which is a big deal, right? Especially for certain genres. Um, but it's hard to say. It's hard to say.
All righty. Um, well, this is something you already kind of answered, but I did want to touch on it. Can you provide guidance on what the cost range is for each type of edit? I'm going to drop that link again in the chat if they wanted to go to the site, and that kind of gives you an idea based off word count for the
Yeah.
different kinds of editing.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like if you and I think we're kind of in the middle. We really have very high quality editing, and we do a lot of multi-level editing. Um, so I think looking at that and then looking at your manuscript, and if it's like, oh, that's a lot for me, which is, it's an expensive undertaking, is like, okay, could I go in and get this shorter? Like, could I chop? And it's happened before. People are like, and you go and you self edit, and it's a good discipline to kind of get it as tight as you can. That's part of the preparation. So you're not overpaying for editing. Um, and then I think the manuscript assessment again is a really great tool if you can't afford a developmental editor. Because at Bublish, that means, a developmental editor is guiding you, um, just in a different way. And again, if you are going for a manuscript assessment, just make sure that it's done by a structural editor instead of a creative writing college student. Because you'll get a
All
very
right.
different.
I think it's going to be our last one, guys. I don't understand how you can save money on editing by doing good self-editing prior to sending your manuscript to the editor. Is it because they can get through it quicker this way? How does that work if they normally charge by the word?
Well, I mean, I don't know how seasoned you are, but self-editing is like you walk away from the work for a week or so, and you shake it off, and then you try to go in with new eyes. It's also critique partners, it's also beta readers, but looking for actual feedback, not compliments. So, some people are better at self-editing, they're more seasoned than others. So I don't know if you'd be great at it, but it's worth it. It's worth a try.
Well,
You,
and I think too, if you are making a solid effort with the self-editing, you might not need every stage of editing. If you get an assessment and they might be like, no, you're developmentally, your book is good. Let's just do a line edit and a structural and different things like that. You might not need
No, you might not.
full. Yeah.
I mean,
So
you can.
it
I think the
varies.
key is the mindset too. It's like, I want you to tell me if my baby needs its haircut. That's the mindset, not like, is my baby beautiful? Because then everybody's going to say yes. And that's just wonderful, but not very useful because, an editor's job is to make it better. And rarely do you come out of the gate, especially as a new writer, and know it all. Like, it's just a lot to learn. So the mindset of working in that pre-editing phase is bring it on. I'm open, bring it on. Tell me everything as much as you can. Load it up. I'm here. I want it. And that will really change everything because you're giving people permission. And then also like trying to make sure these are somewhat knowledgeable beta readers, critique partners. They're deeply read in the genre. That's a good beta reader. Maybe they've written a few books themselves and have had some success as a critique partner or something. But there's a lot of people who just love the culture of being part of all that and they don't add value. So, even maybe being frank, which is a little uncomfortable, and saying, okay, I need to save money, but I need this book to really do well. What are you going to bring to the table? you know, and
Oh,
if you
somebody
like
just
the
popped in.
answer,
Do you work with Canadian authors?
yeah, we
I would
work with
assume.
authors all over the world, and we work, we have done some translations, mostly in Spanish, but we also do UK English, and if need be. But we work with authors all over the world.
All right, excellent. Well, this was a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, hope it
You
was
guys had great
helpful.
questions. Thanks for all the questions, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was really a joy as always.
All right, and we'll get to see you again at the summit, and
Yeah,
we'll get to dig into a bunch of more
come on.
fun topics. And I dropped the link in there again, guys, with the code. So be sure and use that link. Try and get your discount if you would like to um, partake of her fabulous services. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you. And first 20, I think it says it on there, get a free
Mm-hmm.
consultation. So
Oh,
I've
awesome.
started
Awesome.
as of
Awesome.
2026. So yeah, so
All right, guys. Well, I will get this, we'll wrap this up. I'll get this replay out there for everybody who was not able to make it today.
I'll
And
get you the
Kathy,
deck.
we'll talk to you next time.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Bye bye.
everybody.